Hey, 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 everybody. Happy Wednesday. The sunshine has broken through. It's looking nice out there. I ran out. I've been out and about since 9 a.m. I had a showing out in Maple Ridge this morning, and I was driving there and I was like, oh, it's kind of cloudy. It's kind of gray. It looks like it might be a coolish day, but nice sunshine's out, and I've got my man Geoff, as always, alongside me to celebrate episode 19 of the Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. Geoff, my man, how are you?
I am doing well. 19, we're officially legal in some countries. So
Right? Two more episodes and we're ready to go in Vegas, baby. We
two
can
more
take this
episodes.
on the
We're
road.
we're we're, we're legal worldwide. So
Right, we'll be able to take this sucker on the road, man.
it's a good day. It's a good day.
Yeah, man. So, how's everything going with you?
Everything is going well. Just coming off of my surgery. I'm about 8 days in now, 9 days in. So my legs are still looking slim and sleek. They got some nice bruising to them, so it gives it that little bit of that mysterious look. But
That man, they're like, oh, what was this guy up to? A little bit of UFC, a
eh,
little bit of MMA.
well, okay, I'll
Roll with
go
that
with it.
one, Jeff. Roll
I'll,
with that one.
I'll go with it. I'll go with it. But yeah, no, looking forward to a great weekend. Heading up to the Okanagan with the DLC group. There is about an invite of 50 top uh, Canadian mortgage brokers to come to the Okanagan and do a little bit of sun tanning, a little bit of water sports, and just to kind of be around like-minded people. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome. Myself, I went and saw Inside Out, or not Inside, yeah, Inside Out too, with the kids last week. Yeah, and it was amazing. Just so
Yeah.
I loved it. It was great. We had a great time. I know you can't hear it, Jeff. I've got construction going on around me. My neighbors are doing rentals right now, so in the background I hear skill saws and stuff like that. So if I ever get distracted, I apologize, people. I'm living in construction zone here, and it's not even my house that it's happening to. But yeah, so we went and saw Inside Out 2, really nice. Like I said earlier, I was just out on some showing, so business is really, really busy. I'm taking a little bit of the afternoon off to go play laser tag actually
Oh,
with the
nice.
yeah, right. So we're gonna go do that after the pod, and then after that, I got to scurry away. I got some more showings to do, but gave them that little bit of a block. But yeah, man, it's crazy busy, and I don't know if it's gonna get busier. We had a big announcement today. We
Yes, we
cut
did.
it again by another quarter point, and some analysts I was reading believe that there are going to be more because we do need to kickstart the economy because the economy is not moving very well. So they were saying that we're going to actually have to cut a few more times in order to get that economy moving. That to me, as I always said, might be a little bit of a political deal. I'm saying the States is humming along quite well, and now there's a little bit of turmoil and new people injected into the race, and now all that sort of stuff. And who's going to get credit for the turnaround in the economy? And so we are heading up into our own election cycle, and we don't have an economy that's moving just as well as some others. So we need to get our kick started. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit of what I was reading and a little bit of what I'm excited for my clients out there.
Yeah, like July 24th, the Bank of Canada had its meeting today. And just to recap what you said, and our overnight lending rate dropped by a quarter of a point, 0.25% down to 4.5%. Which affects your prime rate, which has also dropped a quarter of a point from 6.95 to 6.7%. And what that kind of means in real simple terms, it's about a 12 to a $14 mortgage decrease in your payment on every $100,000 that you have. I want to make it very, very clear because we have conversations like this all the time when there is a reduction in the overnight lending rate. The overnight lending rate is at 4.5%. That is not the prime rate.
Right.
The prime rate has also dropped a quarter of a point down to 6.7% from 6.95%. And this is what your variable rate mortgages are based on. This is what your lines of credit, secured and unsecured, are based on. So again, folks, if you think that the prime rate has now come down to 4.5%, you're
No.
mistaken. That's the overnight lending rate. The prime rate is down 6.7%. And in simple language, that's about $12 to $14 payment decrease on every $100,000 that you have. So again, good news.
Yeah, it really is. And I think and it's perfect timing for, I guess, what we're going to discuss today, right? We were going to sit down and have a little bit of a chat about the benefits of renting versus or buying versus renting, or renting versus buying, whichever one you want to look at it. I mean, we were talking offline just before this started, and I was saying, and it's not, I'm going to take the realtor hat off right now and just be Allister Carrington. I've never been a believer in renting. I've never been a believer in paying for somebody else's mortgage and paying somebody else's bills and paying for other people to go on luxurious vacations that I cannot do. But I have a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, and she had moved away to the UK, and she was living there. And in the late, or was it the mid late 2000s, when they had their crash, she had owned and gotten eviscerated. And she's now living back in Canada, lives in BC, here lives up in Mission. And there is legitimately nothing you can do to tell her that buying is a good thing. She is 47-year-old firm now. We are stubborn now, as us 47-year-olds get. We are now stubborn. She will not buy ever in life. So I thought, this will be a really interesting topic on what are the benefits, because, there may be some benefits to renting versus buying that somebody may be able to change my mind. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. As a real estate investor, I'm a big believer in purchasing homes. I'm a big believer that the homes that you buy and sell by the end of your life is a 90 some odd percent of what your net worth is going to be. I'm a big believer that your net worth is going to be coming from owning these homes and selling these homes and the built up of equity in it, versus employment income. But I also understand that when people go through an event like your friend, where they have lost a large amount of money, it is hard to kind of switch the gear on people that have had a traumatic event without some really good counseling.
Yeah.
But in the same respect, it also comes down to affordability. We've talked about this in the past, is that most down payments that people are coming up with when they are purchasing homes are being gifted from parents, right? And then depending on where you are, if we're talking Ontario or British Columbia, there is a good conversation why you should rent versus buy, strictly from an affordability level, and where I'm saying that qualifying for a mortgage. So again, a great conversation to have, a timely conversation to have, and I'm looking forward to getting into it a little bit.
Yeah, so why don't we just kick it off, man? Like let's get into it, and you start it off. Like, let's give us your insights from the mortgage end.
A lot of people will have their own opinions as far as should I rent or should I buy. And everybody has their own reasonings, but I want to break it down into simple, everyday, common language that we all know and understand. But sometimes we have to be gently reminded in that, right? What's that saying about common sense?
It's not always common.
Common sense isn't so common.
Yeah.
There's another one about assume. What? Anyways.
Yeah, don't assume the only thing you do is make an ass out of you and me.
Exactly. There we go. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the financial advantages of renting. And again, this comes down to what we've been talking about in previous pods about affordability.
Right.
The one thing that we see in Canadians nowadays that own homes is the affordability, especially when they're coming out of low interest rates into these interest rates, which currently are anywhere from 4.64 to 6.7%. And also understanding that 8 out of 10 mortgages are going to be coming up for renewal by 2026.
Yeah.
So we're hearing a lot about affordability if you're a homeowner, especially as far as the cost of your upcoming mortgage payment, the cost of goods, the cost of your gas, your groceries, everything else. And again, it comes down to affordability. So what are some of the financial advantages of renting? Obviously, it's lower upfront costs. You're coming up with a security deposit. You're coming up with your first month's rent, which again, significantly lower than coming up with 5% of a purchase of 500,000 or whatever that down payment is going to be. Reflecting back to CMHC's report that 80% of people's down payments are being gifted from their parents.
Yeah, that's right? Exactly it. Yeah.
So the other thing is flexibility is that obviously when you rent, it offers greater mobility. There's a lot of jobs out there that that either you have the high likelihood that you're going to be relocating. You have a high likelihood that you may be transitioning at some period of time. We were working on a file this last week on a traveling nurse, which they're just never home, right?
Yep.
So having the flexibility when you're renting obviously is more flexible. Again, depending on what you do for a living, depending on your lifestyle. Speaking to a buddy of mine, we were working out this morning, and this friend of his travels the world. He's a snowboarder. He travels the world, and he has a cooking show and a snowboarding show, but he's never home. He's on the road, I think, 8 months out of the calendar year. So is he gonna buy or is he gonna rent? Again, for him, it might make sense for renting because he's just not home. Right?
Yeah.
Maintenance and repairs. When you rent, if something breaks, guess who pays for it? Not you.
That's it. And this is the one, this is the one, the maintenance and repairs. When I am having these conversations, same thing with people, with first time home buyers, especially, they're coming out of renting and we're setting up, hey, listen, are you ready for this? Because I think that's the one part that people forget about is the cost of ownership. Wow. Not the property taxes and all those other things. It's the literal cost of repairs and maintenance that come along with the home that people might not have thought about, right? And it's that unfortunate slap in the face when it becomes a reality.
Yeah, and a lot of times, again, a lot of people believe the biggest cost is the initial cost of purchasing a home, a down payment, as you said, your property transfer tax.
Yeah.
But when you own a home, condo fees, property tax, repairs and maintenance, buying your lawnmower, buying your weed whacker,
your Christmas lights.
There is so much maintenance and repairs as a homeowner, and when you're a renter, you just
call the landlord.
You just don't have that responsibility. Exactly. Call the landlord.
Stove goes, you call the landlord. Your washing machine goes, you call the landlord. Your hot water tank, your furnace goes, and that's the part. Those are the parts that people forget about.
Yeah, and also again, we touched on this, is your property taxes.
Yeah.
Here in the Fraser Valley, say on a detached home, I'm going to say on average your property taxes, I'm going to say, are between $4,500 to $5,500.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That is an amount. That is a heavy amount of money that you need to come up with each and every year on top of everything else. So again, one of the advantages of renting is just the affordability and the flexibility depending on what you do and where you are at in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there's also on the other side, Allister.
The drawbacks?
Not the drawback, but there's the other side of, as far as, well, what is the disadvantage basically renting. And a lot of people will say one of the biggest disadvantages of renting is you're basically paying for someone else's mortgage. And I
Exactly
think
what I said earlier.
there's a
Yeah,
very, very valid point in there. And a
yeah,
lot of people's opinion is that, if you're renting, you might as well just throw your money down the drain, right?
sure.
So,
It's true. Again, depending on your lifestyle, but more often than not, in my opinion, you don't have the lifestyle, or most people don't have the lifestyle that renting makes sense, right? Unless maybe, I understand like back in Winnipeg, your thing was you're 18 years old, you rent an apartment. It wasn't until I came here, right, that I was like, what do you mean people buy apartments out here? That's ridiculous. Who buys an apartment?
right.
Rent them, right? Because in Winnipeg, you rent apartments. They didn't start selling them until probably the early 2000s is when they started selling apartments. So, anyways, long story short, you rented your first apartment, saved your down payment, and then bought a home, right? And then that was the last time you ever even thought about renting ever again, right?
Well,
Because
and
it's not smart to, because you're raised, it's not smart to pay somebody else's bills and pay for somebody to go on vacation.
Well, the other thing that renters also need to be aware of is that there could be significant rent increases or
Especially here.
uncertainty of your lease being renewed.
Yes.
Here in British Columbia, there is a lot of rental regulations where, as a renter, you're protected. But if we're talking about the province of Alberta,
Yeah.
I don't believe that there is a rental regulation there. Here in British Columbia, you cannot raise your rent, I believe, more than 3% a calendar year. I understand in Alberta, you can rent it up to as much as you want.
Yeah. But the biggest thing to me and we've talked about this before, where most people break their mortgage every 3 to 5 years, correct?
Mhm.
Right? We've spoken about that. And for me, it's not so much the rental increase, because that's going to come regardless, right? And yes, you have to be mindful of how much it's going to be, but for me, it's where you're going to be. And so not knowing if you're going to have to pick up and move your life, right? Every 3 to 5 years. And if you have children and you're renting and you've got a child in a school in that catchment, now if you're person selling and you can't get into another home within that catchment, now you're uprooting your children's lives, right? And so that is the biggest thing for me. It's not even just the uncertainty of the rent increases and how much that's going to go up. It's the uncertainty of where you are going to have a place to live, right?
Yeah, a little bit of full disclosure. Growing up, um, my mother didn't rent or didn't own a home. We rented.
Yeah.
And growing up, I can't even remember how many different schools that I went to from elementary through high school.
Imagine.
I can't even remember how many places that I lived in from kindergarten to when I moved out when I was 18 years old.
Right.
So, to your point, there is a lot of uncertainty. And when you're in a family dynamic, sometimes that isn't the best experience. For for your family, right?
Yeah,
So
that's my biggest thing as a family, but I'm a family person, so that's always the first thing that runs through my head, right? Is how does this affect the family? So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But now here's the fun part. What is the financial advantages of buying?
Everything. Sorry, go ahead.
And here, don't get me wrong. This is where I fall into the sandbox
Yeah,
as far as if I'm going to rent or buy,
me too.
right?
Full disclosure, I'm biased in this discussion.
As am I.
Yeah,
And here's the thing. If you're a homeowner, every mortgage payment that you do is building the equity within your home.
yeah.
And over a period of time, this becomes the biggest, the most valuable asset that you will have. And again, I said it earlier in the pod that when you retire or when you start to downsize, 90% of your net worth is going to be within that home that
Yeah.
you owned over a period of time and with that equity that you built within it.
Mhm.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right? Um, again, another advantage to understand is that you're buying an appreciating asset, right? Statistically speaking, I believe homes compound annually, depending on where you are, anywhere from 4 to 12% per year, depending on who you're asking,
Yeah.
right? And depending on which province we're talking about. But
In
you are
ours, I
buying,
believe, sorry, in British Columbia, we're at the 10 to 12, 10 to 14, I believe it
right?
is.
So which is a way better return than if you're putting into a stock portfolio because your financial advisor, the common Kool-Aid and all the financial advisors will say, yeah, that's too low. But that it's a 6% return on your investment portfolio. That is the long-term goal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So again, you're buying an appreciating asset, which let's talk about British Columbia is anywhere from 10 to 14%
Yeah.
annually. So again, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
Um, we talked about this, the stability.
Ability is huge.
My first home, Alistair, again, my mother rented our whole lives until I moved out. I bought my first home, I believe it was when I was about, I'm going to say 26 years old. I
Mhm.
lived in that home for 23 years. I raised my boys in that home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the stability that a home offers is again a huge advantage of buying. And then obviously, again, there are some taxable benefits when you're a homeowner. And again, I'm not going to dig too deep into this because I'm not an accountant. But
Right.
again,
But
there is
it
obviously,
helps you lessen those costs of ownerships, right? And it's something to look into with your tax person, right? With your accountant. Sorry. But it helps lessen that cost of ownership they were talking about. Maybe that's what, pushes people away from owning a home.
yeah, yeah. And again, you always have to come down to the affordability,
Yep.
right? And again, I think this is the biggest reason why people will rent versus buy is 9 out of 10 times is the affordability,
Yeah,
right?
it's 100%. It's the down payment. It's always your biggest. It's the down payment.
Right. Like, where am I going to come up with a down payment?
Yeah.
Where am I going to come up with my property transfer tax? Where am I going to come up with ongoing expenses? And we touched on this of condo fees, maintenance, repairs, household expenses. Like, where is that going to come
Yeah.
from? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, if you have inconsistent employment, if you are in a type of industry that floats up or down, we go through another world event that we just recently went through. Again, it comes down to that affordability, not only when you're buying your home, but as well as maintaining your home, which we talked about earlier.
Exactly. But that's why it's so important though when you're making that plan, it's having that relationship that you built with that party, with that agent or that broker, right? That is going to help you sit down and make sure that that plan does work for you. So that we're not, because one of the things that we'll always talk about when I'm sitting with a client is, okay, you've been pre-approved for this much, and that's wonderful, but we're gonna set your limit here just in case because we don't want to push you past just in case there is a life event. Nobody expected COVID, right? Lots of people got into trouble. So we're going to set you here and we're going to work here, right? And that way, you're protected. Some people didn't do that or didn't have people advising them to do that sort of stuff. So that's why it's so important to work with somebody you trust when you're analyzing your affordability.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, where I want to kind of leave this is when you are considering renting or buying, I keep these four things in mind. Like, how long do you plan to stay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Me, I've had two jobs in my whole life. I had my first job, I was there for 23 years. I've been, I've had my mortgage brokering business. I think this is going into the 13th year. So my history with anything is if I
Long term.
start, I stay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, make more sense than renting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But again, if you take a look at also statistics in regards to transition, uh, the average time at a job, Alistair, is 3 years,
It's crazy now. I know.
right?
I
So
read.
again, how long do you plan to stay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What type of job do you have,
Yeah.
right? The other things that you also need to consider is your financial situation, right?
Mm,
Is where are you at with your life? What is your ability to save money? What is your ability to create and maintain a budget? Um, I have a good friend of mine is in private banking with RBC. And private banking, obviously, you have to meet a net worth requirement to be there.
yeah.
But also, your for him, he is seeing past the nice cars, past the multiple properties, past all the boats and everything else that they have. And he said to me, he said, Geoff, these people are literally 3 paychecks away from bankruptcy,
I'm going broke. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So again, what is your financial situation? What is your ability to save, right?
Yeah.
The third thing, are you ready for the responsibility?
Yeah.
Are you ready to be a homeowner and do what that takes? Um, it always blows my mind, Alistair, when I'm driving by homes, the most important asset in your life, and you're driving by it and it looks like it's just gonna fall off the hinges.
Geoff, imagine showing those things. Imagine, that's what I'm going to just pause on that quickly. Imagine a kid coming from Winnipeg, Manitoba, where you've just seen home values, are normally, well, when I was growing up, 225,000 was the average cost of a home, right? Now the average cost is 400. So you grew up thinking, $1 million home was wow, wow,
Yeah.
that was $1 million. And then you move here and you see how some people out there allow that investment to be treated, and that investment is $1 million,
Yeah.
right? And you're sitting there looking, sitting there thinking, what is wrong with this individual? It's crazy. Geoff, showing these properties that people have no respect for, it drives me bananas, Geoff. It drives me bananas. Sorry, that's my little rant. It gets me.
I hear you. I hear you. But also keep in mind that land never loses value.
Loses
I
value.
shouldn't say never loses value. And again, it goes to my fourth point to
Yeah.
consider is understand your market conditions.
Yes.
I think here in British Columbia, we've been very, very blessed to say, hey, it's a no-brainer to buy versus rent.
Yeah.
But again, somebody's listening to this podcast over in England, such
Yeah.
as your friend,
Right. They may have a different thought.
they may have a different thought. And there might be some very, very valid points there, right? So, what are market conditions is also another key consideration.
But
So,
and I'm sorry, Geoff, just to pause on that though. Again, it just ties back to when you're working with a trusted professional, they're going to make sure that, or they should be making sure that where you are investing that money is going to work out for you in the long term. So that's one of the things. Again, we sit down and I always tell people, I can find you a house anywhere. It's not a problem. It's, do you want to live in that area? Do you want to live in that community? That's the question. So we're going to analyze the community, the area, and what that's going to look like, not just today, not just a year from now, but what that's going to look like 5 years from now, right? So to your point though, look at the market conditions and make sure you're working with somebody trusted that's going to help you analyze those market conditions properly.
100%.
Yeah.
So, how I like to leave our pods now is the Coles notes
Yeah, baby.
of what we discussed in 2 minutes or less. Do you think I can do it?
I'm going to set the timer.
In 2 minutes or less. We'll
2 minutes.
call this the 2 minute summary.
All right.
All right. Let me know. I'm ready. I'm
Okay, the
stretched.
2 minute
I'm warmed up.
fireside. Hey Siri, set my timer for 2 minutes. Go.
All right, here we go. So here's a summary, folks. July 24th, the Bank of Canada had its meeting. What has rolled out is that our overnight lending rate has dropped 0.25%. Remember, your overnight lending rate is not your prime rate. Our prime rate has also dropped 0.25 point down to 6.7%. For anybody that has a loan that has a prime rate attached to it, what that simply means is a $12 to a $14 decrease in your payment on every $100,000 that you borrow. Renting or buying, understand the advantages of renting, understand the financial advantages of buying. understand that there are many things to consider when you are renting and buying. And one of those things is when you're buying a home, what those costs are. Again, renting and buying, there's always four things to consider. And if you're asking me, Geoff, what are all those? Rewind the pod, listen well, you'll get all the answers. That's what I got.
Holy cow, Geoff, you still had a minute to go, my man.
I did that in a minute.
Yeah, man. You did that in a minute, buddy. Nice work. Nice work. Well, that's it for us, man. Thank you so much again, Geoff, for all of those insights, right? Like you said, we're both pro buying. Buying's very, very important. And listen, from the real estate end, business is actually starting to pick up. I have gotten in the past day 5 showing requests. So that was just came in over the last, before the announcement happened. My phone is going to get busier. I got 2 calls as we've been doing this, and I've got to return. So thank you everybody again for listening. Get out and enjoy the day. Most importantly though, download us, share us, talk about us, send us your comments so that we make sure that we can always be improving for you. We hope that this has been valuable. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast content. Thank you guys again for listening. Geoff, my man, you have a wonderful rest of the day. That's the timer. See, that was the 2 minutes you had. That was just letting us know you were done. Geoff, you got a meeting I know you got to get to. I have one as well. Y'all have a great rest of the day. Peace.
Y'all have a nice day.
Cheers.